but from business and society's point of view, so why open science is relevant to them. Thank you, Tania. You're very
Super.
welcome.
Thanks a million, Siobhan. Hi, everyone. I just share my screen here now. This out of the way. Now, so today I'm speaking on the application and accessibility of open science to business and society. So what I'd speak to today in the topics is kind of look overall, what is open science, what is open access, why we should publish open access and what the benefits are, how to publish open access, and do you have to? So what is open science? So here are a few definitions. Again, there are numerous definitions here, and I've just highlighted a few of the keywords. So it's cooperative work, it's improving accessibility to and the reusability of research outputs. It's transparent and accessible, developed through collaborative networks. And I suppose one of my favorites is foster, because it captures the full essence of open science. It's a way that others can collaborate and contribute where research data, lab notes, and other research processes are freely available under the terms that enable reuse, redistribution, and reproduction of the research and its underlying data and methods. So it's everything that's created throughout the research life cycle. A more international, I suppose, view on it was published this year. UNESCO published their recommendations on open science, again, a very thorough document. And again, the keywords in that is inclusive, openly available, accessible, and reusable. So you can see that repetition over again, increased scientific collaborations and sharing of information, the benefits of open science to society, and that it's all scientific disciplines, that it's not just the STEM subjects, that it is also looking at the humanities and the social aspects of everything. And it's built on the pillars of open knowledge, open infrastructure, communication, engagement of all societal actors. So again, it's not just hitting on academia or researchers, it's everyone's input and how everyone can input into research. So the open science life cycle, it sits really on top of the research life cycle, so it encompasses every single aspect of the research life cycle. So it tackles innovation challenges and engages the community during the ideation. It encourages citizen science and integrates open methods and open data during data collection and analysis. I think kind of to point to Michael's presentation, earlier, you might have noticed in his some of the screenshots and where his data is coming from is the National Biodiversity Data Centre here in Ireland. So that is a database that anybody can log on to and register sightings of flora and fauna, be those native or be those invasive species such as the rhododendron that Michael spoke of earlier. So in that map, you could see where sightings of rhododendron spread has been registered by citizens or by anybody who's come across rhododendrons in Ireland, just logged on to their database and registered the coordinates of where they spotted the rhododendrons. So that made that information available to Michael and his team to map that and to see how invasive the species is, and then to others as well. So you can see how that informs research in academia and how in turn that will then have a knock-on effect then to industry as Michael's project works through its processes. So it also encourages access to publications prior to peer review, I beg your pardon, and that's in preprints as part of the publication process, and using the open access publications to exchange and communicate data during the final stage. So this is that knowledge mobilization. So it's making that information again available to everyone, not just those in academia who have access to the subscriptions of journals and databases. I beg your pardon. So it's a complete ecosystem comprising of many parts. So open science is an umbrella term. So you're looking at open notebooks, such as open lab books, open data, that open peer review we just mentioned, open access, open source, so be that code or software, scientific social networks, and that's citizen science. So that's our open research aspect. And then for the open educational aspect, we have the open educational resources. So it's this view of knowledge for everyone, open knowledge that can be used by citizens, by industry, and that it's not just caged off to those in academia. So at a glance, we've got the UNESCO recommendations on open science. So it's based on their values. So that's the quality and integrity of research, the collective benefit as to how it benefits society as a whole. It's equity and fairness. So we're looking at the, I suppose, the global north and south, diversity and inclusiveness, and then the principles, the underlying principles of those values, and then how that transfers then into the graphic you see here on the left for the open science knowledge, and that feeds into our scientific publications as an example, open software, open hardware, the open science infrastructures, be that virtual or physical, the open engagement against crowdfunding, crowdsourcing, that volunteering, citizen science, and as an example, back to what Michael earlier with the national biodiversity and the rhododendrons. The Indigenous people then, as we look to open dialogue with our other knowledge systems. So we can see how, again, that it's the full research life cycle. So I'm going to speak mostly to open access today. As you can see, as I've mentioned, there are many different parts to open science, and wouldn't be able to cover all in depth in this presentation. So what is open access? It is the publishing and distribution model that makes research literature freely available online to everyone that has an internet connection. Basically, it's no restrictions, you're not hit with a paywall, and it complements and extends, builds on the existing publication channels that are there. So there's still rigorous peer review, be that behind closed doors or open, which we'd like to see more of. So it's making that information available to everyone. Just a tip for anyone that may not be aware of it, there are two extensions that you can add onto Chrome. There's an open access browser extension and an unpaywall extension. So if you are searching for articles, and even in academia, your libraries cannot, I suppose, support or fund every journal or every database out there. So you will still hit paywalls even when you are in academia. But these extensions will show you if that paper is available in an open access format in a repository, or give you contact details to contact authors directly to get access to their papers. So the history of open access, the term itself is about 20 years, just over 20 years old. So looking here at the Budapest Open, all these are linked, the Budapest Open Access Initiative, Bethesda, and then the Berlin Declaration. But actually going back to practice of it, it's actually much older than that. So open science, open access is not a new initiative. We've Project Gutenberg, which is back into the 70s. And this was again to make books available in e-format to everyone and a public domain. And they took it a step further by putting it in a text file. So it wasn't that you didn't have to have proprietary software on your devices in order to view them. The GNU project, which stands for not, the NU stands for not Unix. So again, it's a move away from that proprietary software. And then Archive, which is hosted in Cornell, and that is at this stage over 2 million e-prints, and that was back in the 90s. So open access and open science is not a new concept, although we are seeing and hearing more about it in the last number of years. So why we should publish open access and what are the benefits? Open access provides a number of advantages, and again, it's not just to academics, it's to everyone. It's making that information available to everyone. So it eliminates inequalities to access to knowledge. It allows greater discoverability to those that are doing the research, because when you publish open access in a repository, those repositories are harvested by search engines, so such as Google Scholar. Preprints allow faster transmission, and we've seen that through COVID, and kind of, I suppose, one of the main examples of the strength of open science and open access is the recent pandemic. For example, the full genome, COVID-19 genome, was published in about, I think it was approximately a month after the first person was admitted to hospital in Wuhan, and that then built on that open science, I suppose, really initiative that was taken on internationally for the benefit of society. I think it was in January of 2020, over 117 organizations, so they were publishers, funders, government bodies, signed an open agreement to make all data and all publications freely available, open access immediately. for all research related to COVID-19. That was built on with many more agreements. There was one in March 2020 where 12 countries signed an agreement, the public health emergency agreement, and that made that even stronger. So we've seen that firsthand, how making research available openly was able to speed up the process of finding out more about COVID-19, how to test for it, and eventually then how to create the vaccinations that we have now. So straight away you can see societally how open science in that aspect has, while it may not feel like it's sped up the process, it really has. So that's that faster transmission piece. So it's the greater impact of scholarship as well, because more people can see it. Not to get bogged down in citations, but there is stats there to say that there is a higher citation advantage to open access publishing. It's that long-term preservation of work as well. And when we look to tax-funded or public-funded research, it is making it available to the public, and that again then supports and enables that citizen science because it's available to everyone. It enhances your research reputation and enables and encourages interdisciplinary approaches to research. So kind of to look at it from, again, that societal and that industry kind of aspect, it increases efficiency. So that increased access to publications and journals reduces the duplication of research and therefore reduces the cost of creating research, and that you're allowing that reuse of data. So you're allowing others to build and expand on prior work without repeating it. So you're saving money in order to invest it in other research projects in the future. That quality piece, so due to the wider valuation of that open peer review process and the preprints even as well, it makes open science more reproducible. It allows for more replications and validations of data, which is key, and it helps alleviate the issue of that manipulation of data. For innovation, the open science provides individuals with increased access to research, which leads in turn then to more innovation of new products and ideas. And then the collaboration and societal benefits, the increased access to research and publications allows for increase in national and global collaboration. And again, kind of to use the COVID-19 example there, it's sped up that, that range of attention and collaboration and sharing of knowledge and the transfer of knowledge in order to address a major global issue. So how to publish open access. There are a number of routes. I'm just going to speak to the green and the gold open access routes, these color coding. So green open access publishing is self-archiving, so it's free. So you submit your paper to your subscription-based journal. It goes through its normal peer review process, and at that acceptance point, when you're post peer review, you can submit your article to your own local repository if you have access to a library, if you're working in conjunction with an academic body. If not, there are numerous subject-specific repositories out there. Open Door here is a directory that you can search for subject-specific, or to see if there's a regional repository that would suit your work. So green is free for authors or researchers, and it's free then for those who want to access it, so it's free for the public. Generally what is applied to green open access, that you will have a slight delay in that you'll have an embargo. You're generally speaking about kind of 12-month embargo. So from that date of publication, that post peer review final version will then be made available to everyone. So you will have that 12-month delay. It's not immediately upon publication. And this is just kind of what versions you can make open access. There are lots of different terms that all mean kind of the same thing. So it's this post print, so it's your author accepted manuscript that can always go in a repository. The embargo will vary from journal to journal. This is where your library will help you. They will attach that embargo to the article, and then as soon as that date hits, it'll be made available straight away. Sherpa Romeo is a really helpful resource that you can look up journals to see what their open access policies are. And again, as I mentioned, there are the terminology can be tricky and it varies from publisher to publisher. So you've got your version stages, your submitted, accepted, and then the published. And it's almost like they try to confuse you. These are all the alternative terms then. So your preprint or your original draft, post-print, accepted manuscript, author's accepted manuscript, versions of record, final record, etc. So again, it varies maybe from country to country, from journal to journal, and from publisher to publisher. So it's just to be aware of that, and it can be slightly confusing, but at any stage, always check in with your library. So our motto here in TUS is to act on acceptance. So as soon as you hit that accepted by publisher mark just there to the left of the line, that's when you submit your paper to the repository, and that's when the library will look into what needs to be done with it, how long of an embargo needs to be printed. So it's that after your final peer review and editing, before you hand over your copyright or your transfer agreement to the publisher, that this is what you would act on for the green open access route. It won't cost you anything, and it will make your work available after that time period has passed. The gold open access route, well, I suppose gold, as it suggests, costs, it's expensive. You can select a gold open access journal. Again, you can use the DOAJ, I have a link on the next page, and you follow through that normal process. But when your paper is accepted, in order to make your paper available immediately open access upon publication, you will be asked to pay an article processing charge, or an APC, you will see for short as the acronym. Now, the average cost of an APC is €2,000. It's probably gone up a couple of €100 in the last year. And that the prices you will see on publishers' websites will exclude the higher rate of goods VAT. So in Ireland, for example, that's 23%. So you're adding on another €230 onto that 2,000 there. So it can eat into your funding very, very quickly. So here is the link for the directory of open access journals. So that again will show you kind of what journals are open access and what fees they have. To check with your library if there's any transformative agreements. These are agreements that are negotiated locally with libraries, nationally, or through regional consortia. And so there may be an option to have that APC covered by a transformative agreement if your library has one in place. So always do check in locally with your library. Do I have to? There are funder mandates. But that again is generally down to publicly funded research, so not so much the industry side of it. These are just some links to examples, so the European Commission, the ERC and Horizon. But nationally, there will be a lot of funders will have their own mandates in place, and always check that when you're applying for funding. It would allow you to build in the cost of open access publishing if you have to publish immediately upon open access immediately upon publication, I beg your pardon. And Sherpa Juliet is a really handy database as well that'll give you up-to-date information on funders and their mandates. And that was my whistle-stop tour of open science and open access. I just want to flag with you all the RUN-EU+ work package 5